Welcome to Caesarea. This is going to be the first virtual tour that I actually filmed on location. And the picture that you're looking at now is the aqueduct system. Aqua, water, duct, carrier. So aqueduct is the carrier of water. This invention of the Romans allowed them to start building their cities wherever they wanted and bring the water to the city rather than build a city close to where the water is. This was a revolution, the kind of which can't be really compared to anything else. This allowed mega cities to be built later on, and at the time of the Romans. We have aqueduct systems in Europe going for hundreds of miles, and the one that we're looking at right now, this is actually the towards the end, making its way towards the city of Caesarea. This one is about 12 miles long, and it starts in the mountains of the Carmel. We mentioned the Carmel a few times in our History of Israel webinars. That is the mountain where Elijah is going to defeat the prophets of Baal. That is the most arid area, not arid, that is the most rained upon area in all of Israel. And there is plenty of fresh water over there. So from the Carmel mountain, as long as we're making our way down gradually, the water keeps on flowing. Gravity does the rest. And I'm going to just highlight this area here. You can see this archway built out of stone. And then you can see a few archways on this side as well. What we're looking at here is more than one aqueduct. We're actually looking at two aqueducts. This is one. You can see that it's broken over here. And this is two. You can see that it's broken over here. They actually built them one right by the other. And the reason is because they needed more water to be brought into the city once it became big and populated. So they just simply built another longer aqueduct, maybe 15 miles long instead of 12 miles long. And when it reached the area of the beach, they just attached it to the already existing aqueduct system. In reality, there's another aqueduct on top of these two, but that's on a later period of time, so we're not going to necessarily talk about all of the time periods around here. We're going to focus on the building of Caesarea, which happens just over 2,000 years ago, and the time of King Herod the Great, the one who builds the city, and a little bit afterwards when the Romans take over and control the land of Israel. So without further ado, we are going to switch to our video. These are just statues from Caesarea, and we are going to enter straight in to the vomitoria. Yes, this hallway that you see right in front of you, we are vomiting people in, vomiting people out. This is the main entrance and exit of the theater area. The theater, the amphitheater, and the Hippodrome. These are the three most important buildings that every city in the Roman Empire probably has. They are basically the same in terms of how they're built. The only difference would be when we're looking at them is their size. And the size of a theater, as you can see over here, is basically dependent on the amount of people that are in that city. Now, a theater is half a circle of seats, as you can see from this picture, and a stage in front of it. And again, we're going to highlight a little bit of the area around here. This is the stage area right over here. Can you see the white? Maybe do a different color. This is the stage area, all of this. And they even had these little areas where the actors were able to walk down steps, walk to the other side, and come up somewhere up here in the middle of the show. It was all very elaborate. Every place or every area in a theater has a specific name, like the entrance and exit were vomitoriums. This area below the stage is called an orchestra. The area itself is called an orchestra. Now, when the shows needed some music to add to it, the musicians sat down here so they wouldn't take too much notice away from the actors on stage. And today, when we're looking, when we want to see the orchestra, we are talking about a big group of band players all together. This is where the name comes from the area that they were situated back 2,000 years ago. What is the idea of a theater? The idea, first of all, is that when I'm standing here, look at that, I made myself. Haha. Woo. So when I'm standing on stage, I don't need any kind of special equipment so that people up at the top would be able to hear me. The sound is carried up, and it's quite incredible. Now, I did a little experiment, and it didn't work out the way I wanted to, but let's see what happens here. I went down to the stage, and I wanted to see if through the video you'd be able to hear me when my camera is all the way at the top. So, standing ovation, please. You're going to see me entering the stage right about now. There we go. The problem is you can't hear me. You can see me. But there was too much wind for you to be able to hear what I'm doing. I will be quiet because there are parts that you can actually hear me sing. $10 points to whoever recognizes the song.
Olankas, hallelujah.
Yes, very nice, Tomasz. There were actually two people there who were working on some archaeological stuff over there, and they clapped. So apparently I was pretty good. Now, back in the day, 2,000 years ago, that wind that disturbed you from hearing me right now wouldn't be as loud. And the reason, if I just go back to that area, is because behind the stage, right over here, is supposed to be a big wall. You can see a few of the stones right over here. And this wall goes all the way behind and very much higher. And the idea behind this wall is twofold. One, to prevent the wind from doing exactly what it did, which was ruin what you were listening to. But let me see how we can do this. More than that, look how beautiful the area around us is with the sea in the background. I need you to focus on what goes on stage. Okay, it's very important that when the people are here standing on stage, you are not daydreaming towards the sea and wondering about faraway lands and whatnot. This theater was the way that people understood the Roman culture. When the Romans conquered a territory of land, they conquered it with their army, greatest army that walked the face of the earth. But they conquered the population later on by making those people who were just conquered understand that the Roman culture is the superior culture. How do we portray our culture? First of all, we build the buildings. People never saw these buildings in their lives. The Greeks were the first ones to understand the sound issues. They were standing at the bottom of mountains and were able to listen in on conversation when they were all the way at the top. And they just created a version of that mountain by building a theater. The Romans take the Greek inventions and improve them. And it is very important for the Romans that you come into a theater because people don't read and write back in those days. So if I'm a Roman governor and I need to make the people in my city understand what the culture is all about, I'm going to pay them a full day's workday, not to go to work, but to come into the theater. People were paid to come into the theater. And then they would sit there almost all day long, and they would watch these shows that taught them about the stories of the gods, about the Roman culture. Now, when I feel secure enough that the people understand what the culture is about and they understand the stories behind it, then we can have some fun as well, and we can have the comedies, not just the tragedies and the dramas. We can, if it's close to the sea like Caesarea is, they actually built a channel of water that brought water from the sea this way, from the side over here, and then they filled the orchestra up with water, blocked the water inside, brought 2 ships with crews on them, and they had a game. It was called in the Roman world Naumachia, and the winner was basically whoever survived. You have to understand that in the Roman world, blood and killing and murder, that is a very big part of the culture. And in fact, that is what the second building was all about, and that is the amphitheater. A theater is half a circle of seats with a stage in front. An amphitheater, amphi simply means 2. So 2 theaters, 2 halves of seats, making it a full circle. A full circle of seats, and instead of a stage, we have the arena in the middle. So imagine that we would have another half a circle right over here, completing this circle this way. And then instead of the stage, this entire area would just be the arena. Where does the word arena come from? The word arena means sand. This is what the floor was made of. It wasn't made of tiles like you see over here. It was made of sand. And all of this sand was there to soak the blood, because in an arena, we have gladiator fights. People against people, people against animals, animals against animals, everybody against everybody. And the more blood, the better it was. Usually it was soldiers who wanted to see bloodshed. And therefore, where we have a lot of Roman soldiers, we would have more amphitheaters rather than theaters. The largest amphitheater in the entire world is the Colosseum in Rome, of course, and it was able to sit about 70, give or take 70,000 people. Some people say a little bit more than that, but let's go with 70,000. And the last of the structures that every Roman city would have back in those days is a hippodrome. We're going to see the hippodrome in just a few minutes. So we are going to continue our tour. Yes, we've heard me sing. That was enough. Okay, this is from the stage area. Almost everything you see here is as it was. Almost nothing was reconstructed. When we have reconstruction in archaeological sites, not just in Israel, all over the world, there will be some kind of a line to show us that everything under the line would be original, and then everything above the line would be a reconstruction. So let's say we have this blue line over here. Again, everything down here would be completely original, and then everything above the line, that would be a reconstruction by the archaeologists. As I said, we have absolutely no archaeological line in this theater, and that means that everything you see here is original, of course, without the metalwork and the lighting that was added. In modern day Israel, we actually have shows. Nowadays, we have shows, concerts, especially during the summer. We fill the seats up with more than 5,000 people, and they're watching the show. Nowadays, it's in the evening because in the summertime, it's incredibly hot to sit here. It was also hot 2,000 years ago. So what did the Romans do? They had a unit in the navy of the Roman part of the army. And that unit, all they had to do was go around the different Mediterranean seaports that were controlled by the Romans, and they would provide shade by pulling a big tarp above the area up here all of this, and then it was shaded as you were sitting there. They thought about everything. Now, have you ever wondered, how did they have so much time? Well, the Romans invented free time, to be honest with you. They invented agricultural machines that allowed less people to work the fields, but to produce more food. And as a result of that, people started having free time. And we are filling that free time with the Roman shows, games, dramas, comedies, tragedies, all the things we just talked about. Another view from a different side over here. Do you see this circle? It's as though it's attached to the theater on the back side. A half circle, not exactly a circle. I just marked it in red. There was another building right over here 2,000 years ago that was completely destroyed. Not just earthquakes destroyed, but destruction by man as well. And we believe that this area was a version of a podium and a small altar verse, maybe temple. And in it probably was a dedicatory inscription that was found in the theater area, somewhere around this area. I don't know exactly which seat it was. The archaeologists were flipping over some of the stones of the seats of the theater, and they found a 2,000-year-old inscription in Latin. Incredibly rare to find Latin in Israel. Latin was the Roman language. Now, the land of Israel, they spoke Hebrew at the time. International language was Greek, but when the Romans wanted to convey something one to the other, they would speak in Latin. So this is a very rare find. The original is today in the Israel Museum, in the archaeological wing. Sometimes it goes on display, outside of Israel, but nowadays it's in the Israeli archaeological wing. And we're going to see a replica of it soon. I just wanted to let you see where it comes from before we get there. So let's continue. You can see quite a few different pillars and columns and the beautiful way that they decorated these stones. They were incredible marksmen, not marksmen, they were incredible artists. As we take a closer look at this capital, look at the intricate work. I mean, this took dedication, this took a lot of time to do. And now, as we cross from the theater towards the main part of Caesarea, this is one of my most beautiful views that I like to share with tourists when they come here. The continuation of the city, and these pillars that you see here are actually a part of the castle that King Herod built for himself over here. Every place King Herod is going to live, he has a castle for himself. And notice that we have pieces of stone. You can see right here that this is one piece of stone, and this is another piece of stone, and another piece of stone, and another piece of stone. Usually people have a tendency to believe that pillars or columns were actually built one big stone. This is true usually in the Roman world, not in the Greek world. If you want to make pillars exactly the same size, or as close as possible to be exact, then you build it piece by piece, kind of like a Lego block. So what happens is that the bottom of this stone actually has something that sticks in the middle like that, sticks out in the middle, and the top of this stone, different color again, the top of this stone will have something that it goes into like that, okay? And that's how it's held together. Now, we don't see it from the outside, and we don't even see that it's piece on piece, because after they built it all one on top of another, they actually plaster it so it looks like one big stone. Now, I mentioned that this is the Greek way of building, not the Roman way of building, but King Herod was a perfectionist. He was a lot more into the ideals of beauty that the Greeks gave, or that the Greeks had, and not necessarily the Romans. This is one of the biggest differences between the Greeks and the Romans, the appreciation of beauty. And in fact, when you go to a Greek city and you find a piece of a column, whether it's the capital or the base or even the middle of it, you will almost automatically know how big that column was, how far apart it was from the next column next to it, and therefore you can really reconstruct the Greek city just by one or two pieces of a column. It's quite incredible. Luckily for us, that's the way King Herod did it. Also in statues, a Greek statue is going to be perfect from the front, perfect from the back, ratio-wise, everything, all the intricate artwork that you can think of is going to be put into it. A lot of money as well for the artists. In the Roman world, it would be perfect from the front, but probably a big piece of stone in the back because nobody sees the back. So why put in the effort and the money to shape it if nobody's going to see it? It's just a different way of looking at things. So let's take a quick look at this palace. This was a 2-story high palace with rooms all around a open air courtyard that now I'm going to show you. This is the open air courtyard right over here. And right here in this open air courtyard, we have that, let's call it the replica of the inscription that I talked about. Okay, this is the replica right over here. This is exactly what it looks like. It's just not the real one. And if you can see what I'm circling, I'll take you to a closer look. There are some Latin letters inscribed over here. And let's just see what it actually says before we do anything else. There we go. Okay, so birds do whatever it is that they do, unfortunately. But you can make out the word right here. You don't even have to have me read it for you. It does say Tiberium, Tiberius. We are talking about Tiberius Caesar. Right underneath, in plain English, even though it's in Latin, Pontius Pilatus. This is the Latin way of calling Pontius Pilate. We have his title, Praefectus. And right here, the next word, Judea. Judea, he is the prefect, he is the governor. Prefect, Praefectus means governor of the area that the Romans back in those days called Judea. Judea. And the reason why we placed the inscription here in the palace is because after the time of King Herod the Great, the area that he controlled went to his sons. Unfortunately, they were not strong rulers like their father. Some of them managed to survive a little bit longer than the others, but slowly the Roman governors simply took over and had direct rule over the entire area of Israel. And this inscription shows us that Pontius Pilate is dedicating something or other to Tiberius Caesar. Tiberius Caesar is the Caesar at the time of the crucifixion of Jesus. Pontius Pilate was the governor who sentenced Jesus to the cross. And he lives in Caesarea at the time, and he lives in the palace of King Herod, where we are right now. Now, I don't know if you noticed this, it went by kind of quickly. So let me take you back a little bit. From the inscription, I'm just going to walk towards the beach. We are still walking through the area of the palace, getting closer to this fence right over there. And when you look out over the fence, you don't see the sea. You see this beautiful, this was a pool actually. You see this beautiful freshwater pool. This was the floor of the pool right over here, and you can see the intricate work of the mosaics all around it. King Herod built a freshwater pool right in the middle of the Mediterranean Sea. Why? Because this is the way he wanted to live, a lavish lifestyle, exactly like the Romans back in those days. The more lavish, the better. There is still a little bit of water where the pool used to be. You can see it. And look at this. Look at exactly where the pool is located. Look at that, right in the middle of the sea. Okay. Why can I not draw? Right over here. All of this water today is seawater. Imagine that this is fresh water. Just an unbelievable, an amazing pool that he created over here. And all of that water comes from that aqueduct that we talked about at the beginning. Okay, I may have taken a picture of the artistry construction just to give you an idea of what it looked like. Not really sure. There it is. Sorry about that. So the pool area that we just saw, we believe that there was even some kind of a statue in the middle. And these are klinas. That's the way that they were called. There we go. Like comfortable chairs, like beach chairs, basically modern day. And usually you would have another one right over here, making it 3 of these klinas. And interestingly, in modern day Hebrew, the word for living room is traklin, which is derived from the 3 klinas. 3 klinas, sitting areas. So traklin, triklinas, this is the living room area, traklin in Hebrew. And of course, we had this beautiful area where the wind actually comes through. These pillars, I believe, allowed the air to come through. This was the lifestyle of kings back in those days. Very, very different than what the Jewish people believed in. I've mentioned before in my webinars about the history of Israel that there was a clash of cultures between the people of the Jews and the Roman culture. And no matter what the Romans tried to do, the Jews would simply try to abstain from it. And right next to the theater, or sorry, right next to the palace of King Herod was this incredible building. This is the Hippodrome. When we talk about a hippodrome, the word hippos means horse. Dromus means road. Hippodrome, the way of the horses. If you remember the movie Ben-Hur, there was a horse race. And the horse races in the ancient world of Rome take place in the Hippodrome. 314 meters from north to south. That's the standard size of a hippodrome. The horses will make their way in Caesarea from this side, from the north, and they would go around. You see here in the middle some archaeological ruins. This was called the Spina in the hippodrome, and the horses would go around like this 3 times, all around, and whoever got there first is going to win. But that's not the main issue in a hippodrome. The people standing and cheering over here or sitting over here, they want to see action. They want to see blood. The best place to see blood is right over here because it's the end or towards the end of the turn. This is where the wagons, the chariots, might tip over, and then a chariot behind them might roll over the people and chop their heads off or something like that. And that is exactly what they were going to do. Now, there were seats also on this side. We don't see them today because, well, earthquakes destroyed most of Caesarea, and then the sea just gobbled up everything else. In the Roman times, after King Herod's days, they actually left this hippodrome because it was too close to the sea. It took too much maintenance for the Romans. So they left it to be deserted, and they opened another hippodrome farther towards the east, inland. And there are plans to dig up this second hippodrome nowadays. Largest hippodrome in the entire world is the Circus Maximus in Rome. And if the amphitheater that we talked about, the largest one, the Colosseum, was able to hold roughly 70,000 people, we are talking about the Hippodrome holding about 200,000 people, if not more than that. It shows us where truly the masses wanted to go and what they wanted to do. So aside from seeing a little bit of blood here and there, and aside from finding out who wins, what do you do at a hippodrome that is so exciting? Well, you bet. You bet on everything and anything that moves. Kind of like in modern day football. If you go to England, if you go to almost any place around the world, you can bet on almost anything that happens in a football game. Who gets the next out? Will the referee whistle 2 minutes from now? Will he take out a yellow card in the 30th minute? Will the game go into overtime? Will he give 4 minutes overtime, 3 minutes? Everything is bettable, and that's exactly the Roman culture 2,000 years ago. We have 15,000 screaming fans betting on anything and everything that moves inside this incredible building. Now, I know that you're asking yourself, we're going to be in a theater, we're going to be in an amphitheater, we're going to be in the Hippodrome all day long. What happens when I need to go to the bathroom? Right? Everybody has to know that. So, what do we do when we have to go to the bathroom? Let's take a look. Right there at the entrance, look at that. Your own beautiful public toilets. Isn't that marvelous? And let's see how it works. Apparently I needed to go to the bathroom. You sit, put your tush right between two of those stones. There is running water under you. There is running water in front of you. And when I say public bathrooms, I am talking about public. Everybody walks right next to you, in and out, sitting next to you, and so on. Take a closer look at that VIP sitting area. Again, just as the turn ends. Now over here, if you can see it, there we go. This was not a part of the actual theater, hippodrome. Remember, the Romans abandoned this area, and this became a dumping ground. All of this area became a dumping ground, and they threw out all of whatever it is that they didn't need. And today, when you go here, you can actually still find 2,000-year-old pottery and all sorts of different things that the Romans just simply didn't need. Let's go to the other side of the theater. And you can see the chariots being pulled by the horses. Mediterranean Sea all around you. Well, not all around you, to the west. Those chimneys are modern day Israel's main power supply system. Power factory, electrical power factory. It actually runs on gas, and when that doesn't work, then coal, unfortunately. These are still the seats. If this was built by a true Roman, then the seats to the west and the seats to the east, the ones next to the sea and the ones on the opposite side, would have been same height. But King Herod the Great, as I told you, has this idea of appreciation of beauty more than normal Romans. So what he did was he made the seats close to the sea a little bit, well, less high than the ones that were on the opposite side, so that the people sitting on the opposite side were able to look at the sea. It's still, during intermission. We see a few more archways over here. 1, 2, 3. It continues here. 4. There are a few others as well. This holds up a big, big area, which was the tax area of the city. Caesarea was built as a port city. We're going to get to the port very, very shortly. And when all of these different ships from around the world came into Caesarea, they had to pay taxes. So above these archways is actually a huge area of different taxes, different tax places that you would have to go through in order to pay all of your taxes. We even know what kind of taxes they built, because some of the floor over there has mosaics and inscriptions telling us what kind of tax they had to build. We have more fountains and different areas just for the beauty of it. This right here is actually what we call the Cardo. Now, the Cardo is the main street in a city, in a Roman city, that cuts it from north to south. The Decumanus, another fancy word, is the main city street that cuts it from east to west. This is where most of the business would take place. To the left and to the right would be the shopping area, the taxes as well. And between these two pillars, for example, would be one of the tax places. And there would be tax places over here as well on this side. Everything, of course, is tiled, whether it's limestone or maybe it's marble, depending on how much they wanted to spend on it. And one of the mosaics, as I told you, that has inscriptions, has a very special inscription right over here where I'm turning the camera right now. This specific area has a mosaic. There it is. Okay. You can see it. This is actually Greek, not Latin, because as we said, Greek is the international language back in those days. And this is what it says. This is from Romans 13:3. Will thou then not be afraid of the power? Do that which is good, and thou shalt have praise of the same. This is Paul's letters to the Romans 13:3. So we understand that this inscription was not from 2,000 years ago before Jesus. This is already after Jesus. Caesarea was destroyed and rebuilt quite a few times. And during the Christian period, it was rebuilt as well. We talked about that in the webinar in the 4th century. We continue onwards. And what we're looking at right now, this is the staircase. Let me just point to it. This is the staircase that would take the people up to the main altar. When King Herod the Great builds the city of Caesarea, he builds it in a Roman style. Now, when King Herod starts ruling the land of Israel, we have two different Caesars in the Roman world trying to get power. They both call themselves Caesars. One of them is the guy that we call today Augustus Caesar. His name was Octavius at the beginning. And the other one is based in Egypt. He's with Cleopatra over there. His name is Antony. There is a big battle between Antony and Octavius. Octavius wins and changes his name to Augustus, the exalted one. And King Herod suddenly finds himself in a very, very strange position. Because up until now, up until this battle, King Herod the Great was under the auspices of Antony and Cleopatra. He was giving taxes to them. And now Augustus is the ruler. So what does King Herod do? Leaves everything and goes immediately to Rome and seeks an audience with Augustus. King Herod was raised in Rome. He has very good friends there. He's an incredible, savvy politician. He knows exactly what to do. And he gets his audience with the Caesar. And not only does he have his head on his shoulders when he leaves Rome, he actually gets more area of rule in this region. So now a part of that area is this little place that I call today Caesarea. There was a very small fishing village here, Migdal Straton, the Tower of Straton. I think it was a Phoenician village, if I'm not mistaken. He takes that out, and then he realizes his dream of building a Roman city from top to bottom. He was not able to do that where the Jewish people live because the Jews would not allow him to build altars, for example. A lavish lifestyle like King Herod wants to live cannot be seen in a good way by the Jewish people back in those days. And you don't want to upset the majority of the people that you rule. Already they think you're not a legitimate ruler. So now, where there are no Jews, he can build whatever he wants. And that's where his palace comes from, the lavish lifestyle that he has for himself here. This is why he's going to go all out and build an incredible altar for Augustus and for Rome, the goddess. And later on, he names the city Caesarea on behalf of Caesar Augustus. And that's why it's called Caesarea, or that's why we pronounce it Caesarea and not Caesarea, because it's named after Caesar Augustus. He's not the only one building cities around the world back in those days in honor of Caesar. There are many Caesareas in the area. So all of these Caesareas are going to have last names. This, the one that we're traveling right now through, is Caesarea Maritima, Caesarea by the sea. We actually have another Caesarea in the land of Israel that the son of King Herod the Great is going to build, and he names it Caesarea Philippi. Caesarea on behalf of Caesar Tiberius back in those days, and then Philippi because that was his name. So he commemorates both. The area that you see here with grass was actually water back in those days. King Herod is going to build a port city, as I mentioned, and that port city is going to be one of the largest in the world. I know it doesn't seem like it, but when we look at the Mediterranean Sea, it is impossible to navigate it 2,000 years ago during the wintertime. And that means that if you come to any port in the Mediterranean Sea around, let's say, end of October, early November, what would happen is that you are stuck there for the next 4 or 5 months through the winter time. They didn't have GPS navigational systems. They didn't even have a compass that was created later in the 7th century or 8th century or so by the Muslims. This picture shows us what King Herod built. And he's going to build 2 breakwaters in the area. And then he's going to build a port. This is the entrance to the port right here, and the exit. Only one, so he can control who goes in and who goes out. He's going to build this lighthouse where you have smoke during the day and fire during the night to show the different boats where to go. And all in all, 500 of the largest ships in the world were able to safely dock in this port. Now imagine that 500 ships are docking in Caesarea for 4 to 5 months. Taxes are being paid. You need to fix your boat, you have to pay locally to the suppliers to help you fix it. The people on the boat are going to spend the next 4 or 5 months traveling around maybe and wasting their money in the land of Israel. This is a huge money-making operation for King Herod and of course his sons later on. There's actually a little "you are here" sign. So where I'm taking the picture right now, this is where we are. And the grass area I showed you is this area. So as I said, 2,000 years ago, this was filled with water. And you would dock your big boat over here. And then you would take your little boat and you would go this way, like this boat right here, and continue. You would dock at the little harbor over here and then walk up those steps that I showed you to this beautiful, beautiful altar, temple, and then you would give your gifts to the gods, which is the first thing that you do when you enter a city. This is not something that the Romans invented. You go 3,000 years ago as well in the biblical days, and you see that there were small altars outside the city so that the people coming in can give their offerings to the god of the city or to the god of the area. Nothing changes in the pagan world. They still have to do the same thing. This incredible port had to be built by the newest technology that the Romans had back in those days. And that technology is what we call today cement. And King Herod actually builds these cement blocks on wooden rhapsodies, I guess you could call them. And he makes sure that the block itself solidifies or dries on the wooden rhapsody, and then he burns the wood around, and the block basically drops down. He is going to have divers in the water that when the cement block falls down, they're going to place it exactly one on top of another. So cement block on cement block on cement block until it reaches water level, and then he can build whatever he wants on top of that. And he actually builds the area with flaps that open up during the tide so that he can clean the entire area with the power of the water with the tide. They thought about everything. It was unbelievable. 500 of the largest ships docking here. That means that the size of this port was roughly 144 dunams. That is basically the size of the Temple Mount nowadays. It was probably a bit bigger. You can see these people fishing here. This was actually about halfway of the port. The port itself continues this way and then goes this way. You saw the picture, and then there was the wall coming here, and you would enter from this side where we have the tower, the light tower over here. Now, the biggest money-making operation that was used by this port was to export myrrh and frankincense. Myrrh and frankincense were considered the best smells, the best scents in the world back in those days. King Herod is basically controlling he has a monopoly on the myrrh and the frankincense because it is mined in modern day Yemen. Yemen is to the south of the land of Israel. There was a small tribe of Bedouins that were able to walk in ancient times from Yemen towards the land of Israel, towards Judea. These are the Nabateans. Some of you may have heard about them. They have one of the most incredible buildings in the world today in Jordan. If you go to Jordan nowadays, it's considered one of the 7 wonders of the world. And this is the Nabatean Bank, basically. Indiana Jones was filmed there. When you look at Indiana Jones, when you watch the movie and the whole Indiana Jones and the Holy Grail, the last scenes are basically in the Nabatean Bank over there. They had so much money through the sale of incense that they needed to store their money somewhere, and this is where they did it. In I forgot the name. Anybody remember the name in Jordan? Can't remember right now.
Petra.
Petra, there you go. Petra, yes. So in Petra was a bank, basically. That's where they stored most of their money. So once it reached Israel, he has the monopoly of sharing it with the world. And the port in Caesarea is the place that he exports it with his boats. And it was a huge, huge commercial asset to King Herod's wealth. All right, let's continue. Just take a quick look at the beautiful Mediterranean Sea over here. I actually dove here with my son. You can do archaeological dives in Caesarea, and on clear days, which you don't really have too many, you can actually still see the cement blocks that King Herod had dropped down there. Okay, there's a lot more to Caesarea, obviously. And there are more sites, but they are usually not from the time period that I was trying to focus on, which is roughly 2,000 years ago, during the time of King Herod the Great until Pontius Pilate and a little bit after that. Caesarea plays a very important role in Christianity. It is mentioned quite a few times in the book of Acts. This is where Peter and Paul are going to be arrested. This is where Paul, this is where Paul is going to start sailing out of Israel. This is where the sentencing is going to take place. And if you go to Acts 22 and 23, you can find the sentencing by King Herod's great grandson. Paul, when he's arrested here, his companion is Luke. Luke is the book of Luke. And Luke is the only one from the 4 Gospels that was actually in Israel. And while Paul is in prison, Luke is traveling the land of Israel, and he is the only one that gets the geography correct. When Luke writes in his book, for example, you go up to Jerusalem, you go down from Jerusalem, he understands that Jerusalem is on a mountain And therefore, when you walk to Jerusalem, you have to walk up. When you leave Jerusalem, you have to walk down. He is the only one that understands that the Sea of Galilee is not a sea. He doesn't use the word sea for it. It is a freshwater lake. So Luke is the only one that uses lake. And he understands the Hebrew culture, the Jewish culture, better than the rest of the other Gospels. Um, when I am traveling with tours, most of the time we're probably going to take the geographical descriptions from the book of Luke, and also a little bit more from the culture of the Jews. We're going to take the book of Luke because he was here and he actually interacted with the people and he understands the land much better than everybody else. Another event that takes place around here, um, Caesarea is the place where the great rebellion of the Jews begins against the Romans in the year 66. The Roman Caesar at the time wanted to put his statue in the temple in Jerusalem, and the Jews refused to allow that to happen. Um, and in Caesarea, at that point, was a small community of Jews, and they started the rebellion that spread not just to the Jewish uh, communities in Israel, but later on, it spread all the way through the entire Jewish communities of the Roman world. And that really took the Romans by surprise. This rebellion lasted for give or take 7 years, depending on how you count, the last battle being Masada. Um, and there's another event that takes place here 2,000 years ago when King Herod the Great decides to inaugurate the city. He decides to re-establish the Olympic Games. Now, the Olympic Games for 100 years until the time of King Herod the Great were banned in Rome, but he decides to reestablish them. And he wants the best athletes of the Roman world to come and to join and participate in these Olympics. The problem is that these athletes don't want to come to Israel. I mean, there's only one winner back in those days, and Israel is not exactly a safe place back in those days either. Much like today, people think that Israel is not safe, even though it's completely safe. But 2,000 years ago, Israel is known for its rebellions. The Jews are rebelling against the Romans all the time. And the worst part of it all is that Israel is the border town between Rome and its great enemy to the east, the Parthians, the Persians. So why would these best athletes come? King Herod does not give up. He's very stubborn. He sends more letters to these athletes and he tells them, I'll make it worth your while. Instead of just one prize, we are going to revolutionize sports industry and we're going to give you 3 prizes. And this is where we start having 3 prizes in sporting events until today. It started right here in the land of Israel. Now, the Jewish people are not very well known for being the best athletic people in the world. You can probably have on one hand with your 5 fingers count, known Jewish athletes. Almost nobody knows names of Jewish athletes. We have 1 gold medal in an Olympic event in the modern days, and that's in sailing. But we do have our share of historical moments in sports history. The first wrestler to ever live was our friend Jacob. He wrestled God. There you go. First wrestler in the world. And we revolutionized sports industries. And it was in the land of Israel where 3 winners were declared. Nobody really cares about second and third. Let's be honest about that. I don't know anyone that knows somebody who won 3rd place in an Olympic event in the last Olympics, unless it's like a family members of there. But it started around here. For the athletes themselves, of course, there was some kind of prize, even if you're in 3rd place. So that made it more attractive, and the athletes eventually came, and the Olympics were held in that Hippodrome. That's usually where the Olympic events are going to take place. And there are more stories, of course, about Caesarea that can be told, but we're going to share that with you when you come to Israel. So thank you for joining me. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will hopefully see you in 2 weeks. Have a wonderful night, everybody. Bye-bye.